Hi, thank you so much for coming to our panel. This is everything you wanted to know about trailers, but we're afraid to ask. Please feel free to raise your hand. Danny Exum is our moderator, and he will be fielding questions as well as sprinkling in his own. So I will go ahead and
You guys better have good ones, because mine are not that good.
That's true. So please ask them. Anyway, Danny, take it away.
All right, thanks for coming, everybody. As Kelsey said, this is our Everything You Want to Know About Trailers But We're Afraid to Ask panel. My name's Danny Exum. I'm the director of music at a trailer company called Workshop Creative. And we have a very distinguished panel here today. I'm going to go through and introduce them. They're going to tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we're gonna get into it. Okay. So first, I guess we'll do this way. This is AG, right? Producer, songwriter, extraordinaire. Okay. Then next, who's next? Anny. Hi, Anny. Head of music at Make.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah. Everybody say hi.
Little icebreaker question. Raise your hand if you're hungover. Woo!
Hey.
All right, that's it.
You didn't raise your hand. I know you're hungover.
I know you are.
Got him. Okay. Kelsey Mitchell, director of music at Ignition. Hey. David James Rosen, who's a partner and composer at Totem. And then we've got Evelin Garcia, who's the music supervisor at The Hive, which is the Disney in-house marketing team.
Just realized you're wearing a Disney jacket.
Yeah, very dope.
There you go.
Really
Reppin'.
repping it hard.
Always repping.
Very on brand.
So I wanted to get into this by just sort of having everybody kind of give us an overview of like what sort of projects they're working on, or like what sort of
We can't talk about that, Danny.
No, I want names, especially from you.
Specifically, yeah.
No, I mean, just sort of here's the thing, like we want to really make this feel educational. So I want to go through, everybody has a different process. Specifically, the composers have a different process than the music supervisors, and we kind of want to, pull the wool back on what that, relationship is. So Kelsey, can you just tell us, like, how do you like to work with composers? Like, when you guys are doing a project, right? When are you calling a composer? Are you calling a composer every time? That's a lot of questions. Why don't you answer those two questions?
Keep going.
We'll go from there.
Well, I think trends have changed. I feel like now more than ever, clients are just kind of expecting everything to be a bit customized or coming from a place of originality more and more, I think, just over the past few years. That's the trend I've noticed. More often than not, what is happening is we have a piece of music that is kind of working, like the tone is correct, there's elements we like, there's elements the client likes, the producer, the editor, everyone's like, yeah, this is pretty good. It needs to be better. So we make it better. We go to David, we go to AG, and we say, can you do X, Y, and Z to this? Can you add orchestral elements? Can you remix it? Can you make this more conducive to a different type of tone? Can you make it bigger?
And so, not to interrupt you, but so let's sort of like drill down on that part. Like, so if the client is saying, or the creative director or somebody is saying, like, this song's really great, but I hate it. Make it better. What are those sorts of things that they might ask for? Like, is it, certainly like if it's a hip hop song, for example, we've taken out the vocals and it feels like, a little bit empty. Do you know what I mean? One note,
I mean,
right?
hip
So like,
hop
give me
has
some examples of things like that.
Hip hop's a good example because hip hop has a tendency to feel one note to the client. They feel like it doesn't have the peaks and valleys that other types of genres do. And that's just the way hip hop is normally made and how it is. And so that's when the client will be like, oh, and clients speak in very vague terms, and then you have to take that, translate it, and give that to the composer, right? So if the client's saying it's not big enough, it's not dynamic enough, it doesn't have enough emotion, then you need to kind of interpret that based on your project and be like, okay, well, let's add some string elements. Let's create a big stop down in the middle. Let's create a rise in the middle, a climax, and then bring it back down. And basically just kind of rework the song so it fits a trailer better by using the skills of a composer. But I think that would be a good time to ask the composers, like, can you explain the differences in what you do and the different types of media you work on? Right? Like the difference between a compose from scratch versus what they make that's already ready to go.
Yeah. I think especially when you're talking about hip hop tracks, it's like as a genre, it's obviously heavily lyrically focused, So a lot of times when the lyrics are removed, because you can't have lyrics playing all the way through a trailer, you have dialogue, you have sound effects, you have all these other things that are kind of helping to tell the story of the trailer. So when that's removed, it still has to have musical dynamics and it has to build. Like every trailer, I'll never say every for anything, there's always exceptions, but most trailers need to kind of step up and need to continue to evolve over the course of the trailer. Right. So, if you have it could be a really great hip hop song, but lots of times the music is not necessarily front and center or meant to stand alone. So you have to kind of create those elements, customize it in a way that makes it kind of continue to lift, like reach a peak, a back end, as we call it, like a climax, and have kind of a title button. Sometimes it's maybe stripping it back in the open in a way where you need less elements so that it kind of has somewhere to go. Maybe it's got its sort of middle section that's more groove reliant and then has somewhere to build to. And I think, it's also a matter of trying, at least this is how I think of it, AG, I'm curious what you think as well. It's definitely important to try to not just sort of slap elements on top of it that don't seem to make any sense with it. I think it's important that you sort of respect the song that you're working with, whatever it is, and kind of live within that song. And sometimes it's maybe recreating stems that don't exist or elements that feel like they would have been a part of the initial production and kind of helping it have that dynamic build in a way that feels conducive to the song.
Yeah, living within the world of the song, right? Yeah, I like that.
That's a really good point, especially just in terms of the elements. As you said, sometimes a song, like if you run into a song that it's just like a stereo track, you're not able to get stems or whatever. Like, what's something that you, AG, would do with that? Like, what's a solution that you could?
I mean,
do you know what I mean?
With remixes in particular, I think it's the kind of thing where I usually like to strip everything away and just work with the vocal and start there and reharm it and see like what the different chords are like do to the melody and how they kind of make them feel different than what how they originally felt in the in the original song. And then I kind of start building from there, and then I'll start like reincorporating like key elements from the original production that I'm like, oh my God, cannot lose this cool guitar riff. I mean, it's like the thing. It's like an incredible hook from the original. We have to use it somewhere. I mean, duh, But like some of the other elements, that just aren't as defining of the original, I'm like, no, we don't need that stuff. We got to do something else.
But how do you do that if it's a stereo track?
Right.
Oh, if you don't have stems.
Right.
Okay, sorry. Well, that's harder.
Well, yeah.
But there's always kind of, it's like if there's like a section where it's like just an instrumental, you can like kind of cut that and like put it somewhere where there's a spot where there's no harmony, like there's no bass or there's no like chords really. It's like just like then you can reharm it however you want, and then you can just sort of like beef up whatever the groove is. It's already there. You beef it up and you make it more trailerized. You make it more badass. You make it more impactful and dynamic.
We have a phrase at my company where we call it an invisible remix, where you're not actually remixing anything or adding anything. What you're doing is creating instrumental sections that don't exist. So it's essentially you hire somebody to try to get really authentic covers of, say, a Rolling Stones track, et cetera.
Exactly.
Does anybody want to jump in on any of the like clearability, licensability on when
I mean, that's a great
we're sitting here just like
question.
flexing, like,
Remix,
yeah,
yeah.
remix this.
That's a
And
great
it's like,
question. I
First
mean-
off, we have to make sure we're allowed to do that.
I think that's a great
Ask
question. I mean, where do
forgiveness,
we,
not permission.
like Evelin maybe, like where do you, like if you guys are doing, if you have an idea, you go to David and say like, this is the idea, this is the song. Are you asking for permission first? Are you doing the thing first? And do you know what I mean? Like, what's that process like?
I'm also just going to toot because Evelin just put out the Wakanda trailer.
Yeah,
that
Black Panther 2.
did
We're going to talk
something
about that,
very
though. We're going to talk
similar,
about that.
which was Kendrick and Bob Marley.
And that was Totem.
Some big
And that was
artists.
Totem as well.
That was Totem. So,
Yeah, we're going to definitely talk about that,
Give her a
which
little
is,
toot-toot.
I would love to get sort of the, the nuts and bolts of how that went down. And
Licensors, cover your ears.
right, you guys definitely don't want to hear this.
I'll be really honest, it depends. So we work with very, very fast deadlines and turnarounds. So sometimes we have an idea and we don't have time to ask for permission. So we just go. But sometimes, and thankfully, because I'm in-house and I work for Disney Studios, we have a whole legal team, a whole licensing team, a whole clearance team, and it's a very quick email of just being like, hey guys, we have this idea, can you look into what we can and cannot do? Meanwhile, we are already kind of doing it. So it's not the greatest answer, and I know that we should be asking for permission, but just the God honest truth is sometimes we have like 2 days to turn something around, or 3 days or 4 days, and if one of those days is eaten up by waiting for a response from a label or a publisher, or sometimes it's like they have to ask the management team,
Right.
then somebody like David or AG loses 24 hours, which
huge.
is insanely valuable to us.
Can I just sing your guys' praises too for a second? Because I think that the kind of benefit of having a music supervisor on the project who knows what they're doing is that lots of times there's a built-in knowledge of things that will and won't clear and things that are possible and things that are not. And that saves people like AG and myself a ton of time, because there's just nothing worse, and listen, it happens sometimes, but there's nothing worse than putting a whole lot of time into doing some big, amazing, customized remix and then find out, oh no, this artist just doesn't license. Like, they're not going to do it.
Right.
You have to put their song in linear and you can't alter it, And that stuff happens. So when you have a music supervisor who knows all these kinds of things of what you can and can't do, then it helps us kind of start from a place where we have even a shot at being successful.
And that's a really good point to talk about, like how we, like the different projects we work on. There's some stuff that we get that we know, like, man, everybody wants to be a part of this. Everyone's super hungry for this. Like, we know, like, the budget is, there is no budget. We can do whatever we want. And then there's the smaller things where, like, you really have to hustle. You have to solve the problems. You're trying to figure it out. So that's definitely runs the gamut. So like when you're working on something like Wakanda, like what a dope project.
Right.
You're gonna have people really wanting to like knock down the door to be a part of it. And you wanna pick relevant artists that are gonna be associated with that, right? Like we're not calling Katy Perry for Wakanda, right? Like
Absolutely not.
That's not happening.
Why
I mean,
not?
whatever, she's got Rourke.
She does
be a
rap
no.
music. No.
What?
No.
Yeah,
That's a terrible-
Dark Horse. There's
Dark
a lot of
Horse,
options,
guys.
right? Yeah.
But I mean, I also
So-
feel like it's kind of part of the gig, this sort of like, oh God, okay, I'm gonna do this cover, I'm gonna do this remix, and
Like a
we're
slight
not
risk.
sure that they're gonna
Yeah.
be okay with it. We're
Yeah,
just
it's always
gonna
a
make it
gamble.
undeniable and hope.
Well, I
Well,
have
that's
a funny
yeah.
question for you two, because you guys probably get asked to do some wild stuff sometimes. Like, how and what do you do when someone's like, all right, so I want to cover, Garth Brooks, and it's going to be for, Wakanda. And you're like, that is a dumb idea. How do you guys handle that? Because I know sometimes I get asked by my clients to do some real dumb ideas, and I have to be like, well,
I'm very
how
curious
about
what
that's
you
an
do.
A
AJ.
idea?
I know what I
Why
do.
don't you answer that question yourself?
So Vanessa George Perry was like, hey, so remember?
Where is she?
This was actually super cool, but it was like, okay, I don't know how this can work, but so I was to do a sort of Latin flamenco style all-star for Puss in Boots 2.
Like Smash Mouth also?
Yes, and I the
Whoa.
remix, and
This panel's
and
over.
used-
I would
and
like to
used
hear that.
yes.
his
Yeah.
vocal and everything, and I was like, okay, how the hell is this
Wait,
gonna
you
work?
did the kitty voice, the Puss in Boots voice?
No.
Oh, okay.
That would be amazing.
No,
How
the
did you
guy
do
from
that?
Smash, like the actual,
okay.
the actual acapella.
the guy from Smash Mouth.
Yeah.
yeah, that guy, that canceled guy.
Yeah.
And it was so effing fun. It was so fun and ridiculous. I was just like, this is awesome. But it's just like, sometimes it's those ideas that you're like, okay, yeah, right. Like Back to the Future. Yeah, so like this guy's gonna go back in time and he's gonna make out with his mom. Like, like who would ever
Green light.
think that? Green light.
Yeah.
And it's just like, ends up being the coolest thing.
I mean, that's a good point, I think, and maybe we can all speak to that. And just in terms of, when asking permission or not, a lot of times you're asking people permission that don't really understand what we're doing with it. So on paper, you say, I'm going to do, whatever, Garth Brooks and Wakanda, and obviously, please don't.
But I think a lot of the labels understand that. Like
then-
when they send
well,
stems, they're like, well, just send us the thing after and we'll see if we can approve. And you're like,
I mean, yeah, they
"Okay."
understand it, but I think that they don't understand how we're going to use it, and so it's frequently, obviously we need to ask permission, but it's always nice to just sort of like do it and be like, here you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
lots of times people can't really, understand how something
Right.
could work until they hear it.
Until they hear it or
And
see it or-
yeah, and I completely understand that. So sometimes we have to just sort of like proof of concept something.
Definitely proof
You
of
know?
concept is
Yeah,
big.
I will say I'm more likely to ask for a kill fee in that scenario.
100%.
Absolutely do that.
You know what I mean?
Why don't you
Let's talk about that. Like, how
kill fees
often are
versus
those?
demo
Explain the kill
Are
fees?
you
fee.
asking those?
Oh, a
Explain
kill fee
folks.
just so I mean, very quick music licensing thing. Us as composers don't get paid unless our music finishes in the trailer, comes out. A lot of people don't know this. Yeah, it's when I
didn't
talk
know
to
that?
people
Did
outside of
anybody
trailers,
not
Show up to
know
work
that?
not
Raise your
knowing
hand
if we're
if you
going to
didn't
get
know that.
paid.
when I talk
Everybody
to
knew
people
that.
outside of
Good.
our industry, they are shocked to hear that. You know, so the amount of work that I do that doesn't see a dime would blow your mind.
Hefty.
But so hence lots of times, especially if there's kind of like a really fast turnaround or it's a lot of work that's needed or something, we'll ask for what's called a kill fee, which is just usually it comes out of usually the budget from the trailer house. Sometimes they'll get reimbursed, but it's just a small amount of money just for your time, you know. I mean, it depends. It runs the gamut. I mean, like $500.
Yeah, 500 to about
$500 could be
$5,000
$1,000,
depending on
$5,000.
what you're working on.
Yeah.
And like reusability too. So oftentimes we're asking them to like work a track that like, it's row your boat. Like there's not a lot of, it's like.
Or if something
Yeah.
involves a theme from the film or
Yeah.
something
Right.
like that,
And
it's
they
like,
can't
Can't reuse it for anything
Can't
else.
put it on an album, can't kind of repurpose
It's
it.
not
in any
useful
way.
for them in the future should it
Yeah.
not see the light of day. They want to make sure that they can still pitch
And then
it.
demo fees they get paid regardless, and
Yeah.
those are similar
Yeah.
too, which I think as trailer supervisors, we do try and fight to get people demo
Absolutely.
fees
Yeah.
because we know.
So amazing.
Right.
I
But
feel
you
like
wouldn't do
that's
a
on the
demo
rise.
and a
I-
kill. It's like one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or nothing.
Yeah, well,
Or
that's funny you
not.
say that. I think of them as the same thing.
I
Is
do
there
too.
is there a difference? I don't
Yeah,
know.
demo fee you get
Well,
paid
kill
regardless.
fee
Yeah,
if it
so like
dies.
demo you get
Yeah, okay,
paid,
right,
and then
right,
the
right.
kill
You won't
fee
get the
is
kill
if
fee
it
if
just
it finishes.
if it
Then you
yeah,
just
yeah.
get extra money.
That's funny. I've been doing this a while. I never really thought about the
In
difference.
fact,
This is an
I
educational
hate.
panel for everyone.
I like.
Learn
I'm-
something every day.
What's the word? I can't think of a word right now. I'm totally blanking. But like, I don't like the word kill. Like kill fee.
Yeah.
Like meaning, don't jinx me. We're not giving you a kill fee. This thing's
That's true.
finishing.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's
I'll
no
keep that
way
in
they're
mind.
not picking ours. So yeah, you get that demo fee, baby.
I mean, the thing too, and like I definitely do this a lot because I'm a producer and a songwriter, and so I tend to approach, like when I'm not doing a remix, I tend to approach trailers from kind of a song perspective more than a traditional composer perspective. So if I'm asked to do something and write something for a thing and then it doesn't land, well, I've got it in my back pocket potentially for something else.
You wrote
And
a great
that's sort
song.
of the investment of time that I would be sort of doing anyway, because it's just part of my job. Like I show up to work not knowing if I'm ever going to get paid. That's like the deal, and you have to love it enough to be like, well, I don't care. My wife
Another
cares.
thing to note
I
is
don't know.
when these
Wife
guys do remixes for us, especially if they're really big, well-known songs, if unfortunately our trailer dies and somebody else gets the finish, I mean, oftentimes we try to repitch those songs for other projects. We try
Yeah.
to bring them back to life, either in TV spots or just a whole other project in general. Like I think.
Or sometimes a competitor trailer house takes the custom we
or
made and
that.
finishes it in their trailer, so they still get paid. We just are sad.
You didn't get
There's something that I think David
how
has
does
done
that
that's
happen?
like
The client asks for the files and they give
Oh,
it
yeah.
to the
And
other
they give it
even
to them.
know that they exist.
because they saw it in our V1 or V2, and
When you
then they're
think
like,
about the
"Ooh,
creative,
Also-
it's all their creative, so they're seeing everything.
Yeah, and also a lot of times, and this has happened a few times that I know, the studio executive, whoever it is, will, because they're watching all the cuts and they'll say, I like this music, but I like this cut better. So they'll,
And to be clear, by the way, when we all work at different trailer agencies, we compete. So it's
Yes.
called multiple vending on
Yes.
projects. So they often have like different marketing ideas or sometimes the same marketing idea. So we are competing. Like most trailers, there's probably like 2 to 5 different agencies working on it, competing to get that.
depending on the
finished.
bigness of the film.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just if that wasn't clear, that's what
And then
we do.
there are multiple campaigns too, right? That are happening at the same time, and then maybe
Well, for the
It can
bigger
be. They're
ones, there's
just-
like an international campaign versus the domestic. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
like
TV,
promos
digital.
and stuff, like TV.
Oh, the TVs
Yeah.
versus a teaser.
Sometimes
yeah.
they're very markety, like they want to hit specific quadrants, and so some shop will cut one thing, other shop will cut another. It just depends.
Yeah, so a typical trailer marketing campaign will have I'm just going to talk about a big one. There'll be like an announcement piece. That would be something that would probably be like 10 seconds to 30 seconds, usually very graphical, and it shows like the main title thingy. Then the next thing would be like a teaser. That's usually just like little nuggets, not as much dialogue. It's
tone
usually about
poem.
a
Tone poem, yeah.
tone poem.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Andrew Higley.
One random line from a character floated over like just the most gorgeous images from that film. That's usually teaser. It's usually 2 minutes. or
Normally,
below.
way more music centered,
And
too.
that's like, I would say we all probably love
love
working on
those.
teasers.
Love teasers.
Because
Love a
you
teaser.
really, music is just, it drives it. You can use a lot more lyrics. Just a song just sort of drives it. The next thing will be the trailer. That's usually more story, so people actually know what the hell's going on in the movie. That's usually about 2.5 minutes. And then after that, then you get into like digital campaigns, TV campaigns. And this lasts, by the way, probably about a year. So you get the first thing, and then the movie doesn't even come out, right? So we're working on these movies prior to it being scored, prior to it even being shot sometimes. You're working with storyboards, especially like, anybody here who works on animated stuff. Danny, you work on quite a bit of animated stuff. They're literally cutting trailers with like black and white, sketchy, like hand-drawn things, and you have
Yeah,
to
they call
try
them animatics. It's literally like animated pencil drawings.
Right. Yeah. So I
You
would
just plug it in when the animation is done.
Yeah. So in terms of like music use, I would say the most content that comes out is usually during those TV campaigns because there's like lots and lots of different pieces that come out because they'll be geared towards certain things. Like we're gonna do a media buy on the Disney Channel. Or we're gonna do it during the sports.
Unless they blow their budget on
I
the
was going to
teaser.
say, let's talk about that. Talk about budgets and in when you have some kind of amazing teaser that they want it to be this really great art piece, right? But then use a song that doesn't necessarily help you down the line. What are some things that happen in that instance?
Right. Okay. So typically for marketing, when you license the music, you are licensing it for the entire campaign. So that's why trailer music money is big because they're buying all the rights. They're buying it worldwide. It's going to be shown everywhere. And you have the right to like use it in other like
Cut downs,
yeah,
TVs.
cut downs, or even
Digital.
a completely new sort of marketing piece. However, not everyone's down with that, or you don't have the like crazy money, or you're using the Beatles, right? And they're like, yeah, you can only use it once, and that's it. So you spend your Beatles money on the first piece, then you've got 50 other things you have to cut. You now have to either find less expensive music, stuff that sounds similar to the Beatles, or there's a thing called approved libraries that like a lot of the streaming agencies do. They pay like a lump sum blanket deal. And then we dive in there and find all the like, sound alike type stuff, all those sound alike.
That was just a great little nugget you dropped though in there. Like just do something that sounds like the Beatles.
I know.
People ask for that kind of thing. I'm
Right.
like,
People do. They ask for it,
literally
and you
do.
have to just be like, sure.
Sure, I have that. No problem. I can do that.
Yeah, so that's
Sorry,
kind of-
Annie.
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah.
okay. That's
Oh my
okay.
God!
that's great.
One time I got asked to do for a Star Wars promo. I got asked to essentially combine the themes from like the first 3 and then the themes from like the last 2 into one.
Super theme.
John
It
Williams
was-
mashup.
It was the hardest thing I've
A
ever done.
mashup with different keys.
And also, by the way, sound like John Williams.
yeah,
of course.
And I was like,
Simple.
by the way,
That's
John Williams
obviously- wait,
ended
that
up
wasn't the
doing
first
it. I was
note?
like, why did you ask it? Okay, cool. Thank you for the exercise.
May I have a demo fee, please?
Right. Yeah. There you go.
Filthy.
Yeah, demo fee.
Excellent. Excellent
I
example.
definitely couldn't use that for anything else.
Yeah. So we've got about a half an hour left. I wanted to see if there's questions from the audience. I think if people are, have questions or want to know something or whatever, I think, yeah, go.
Curious, like when you say you're always in competition with each other, approximately how many composers are you up against when you're pitching for a trailer?
That's an interesting question.
I mean, so many or not many at all.
Well, if we're pulling,
We
if we're
don't know. That's the thing. Is
Yeah.
like we oftentimes know that we're competing against other people, and we know that there are 2 to 3 other shops.
that's
We
trailer
don't
shops
know-
versus each other.
Trailer shops.
Yeah, so we don't know what other trailer houses are doing or how many we're competing against.
Unless
And
the
then-
client has a cattle call.
Yeah, unless like the client somehow drops a hint or just straight up is like, so and so is on this. But I also like if Annie and I are on a project, I don't know what Annie is doing and I don't know what direction they were given. So maybe our client told Jax like, hey, we need 2 trailers from you, and then we only need 1 from the Hive. So we don't really know. And then it also depends on like how many people we're calling as well. I don't know if people are calling multiple composers for multiple ideas, if they're calling one composer for one idea, but I sometimes think that it's better to not know. Just focus on like
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do
your
you.
creative.
You just gotta do you.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Evelyn and I are currently competing on a very, very big movie, and we were comparing for the first piece how many custom pieces of music we did for the first piece. We were like, how many did you do? How many did you do?
So many.
It was a lot.
I'm also wondering if you've had specific songs cleared that are hard, that might be difficult or not, but if oh, okay, well, we've cleared this song, before for this, we'll go back to them, we know that they're easier to get versus
You mean like
something
from a
else.
previous project?
Yeah, like maybe not the same song, but the same artist.
Because you know their budget, or
Well, because they might be easier to clear than somebody else.
Yeah.
Do you kind of lean that direction, or is it just like we want this song?
I think trailers are blessed with pretty healthy budgets,
Yeah.
and we tend to not take that so much into account. We tend to pitch for creative first,
Right.
and then let them see the V1s, and then we're like, okay, now let's talk specifics about it.
I feel differently. I hold a grudge.
I mean, yeah, there's definitely
against
going to be a
who?
grudge, but
Well, if someone
gotta just
does not
swallow that.
clear,
Swallow
yeah,
those
if someone
festers right
doesn't
there.
clear, and usually it's for like content purposes.
Oh
or
yeah,
budget
I mean that's
purposes.
different. Yeah.
Typically in trailers, they will find a way financially to like fix things if they really, really
they
want
like it,
something.
yeah.
However, there is just some people who are like, nope, ask again, nope, one more time, no, right? And it's just they don't like the project, or they don't like marketing. And so marketing is something that sometimes we run into when you're a part of somebody's art. Like if you're working in show or in a film, you're like, yeah, I'm sharing my art with yours. But when you're thinking of selling something, people just often don't want to like align their brands, whatever that might mean. So we do have issues with that occasion. And I will say, yeah, if someone denies me, I'm like, you're off the list.
I think that also goes
Yeah.
back to David's original point when we were earlier talking about working on things in the licensing aspect of it and asking for permission. When we get those no's, we're fully aware of who's going to say no down the line. And regardless if somebody's just like, Arcade Fire, for example, they're notorious for not licensing. Like, they just will not clear anything. They don't really believe in marketing. I respect that. Like, it is what it is. I will never pitch an Arcade Fire song because I'm never going to put a composer through that. I'm never going to allow our client to fall in love with an idea, fully knowing that at the end of the day, we're going to get a no.
Right.
Or, I mean, there are tracks out there that have like 20 writers and 12 publishers, and it's
God,
it's
yeah.
going to be a real headache to clear. And it's not that if it's the perfect song, I mean, this is really more your guys' territory, but if it's a perfect song, I would think that, you might go through the hoops to make it happen. But
Oh yeah, the
if
For sure.
studios have entire clearance teams
Yeah.
to do that. I mean, that's being a music supervisor at a trailer house. Like we kind of are like, and here you go, and they
Figure
kind
it
of
out.
With the
Good
licensing,
luck.
we don't deal with the money. We
Sounds
don't
like
deal
you
No,
with
it's a really
legal.
good song, though. It's really good. Here, clear.
I promise it's great. Have fun with that.
Total side note, I would say most hip hop albums tend to get released without having all the splits cleared. And I would say
Facts.
most of those clearances get fixed when they get licensed.
Right.
So it'll
Yeah.
be, the album will be out.
Fix it real quick.
They fix it quickly. When
Yeah,
Yeah,
and, and it is. There's a bunch of different writers, and you haven't tracked down so-and-so's friend, so-and-so's producer. And when there's big money on the line, they're like, okay, they're going to start answering their emails. So that's just something that I remember running across when I'm like, the album's out though, it's playing, and you guys haven't figured out who owns what, and it's like, nope, not yet. And we figure that out, because we have to license it, and it has to be papered correctly. And you'll even get that from labels. They'll just say like, splits aren't figured out yet, or it'll be like your splits are 125% because so and so and so and so haven't agreed, and you're like, that doesn't make sense, but they're like, that's what it is.
Wild West.
Other questions?
Yes. Hi, Daniel de Provenci. Hi, nice to see you guys
Hi.
again, live and right here.
How you doing, buddy?
A question, both for the music supervisors and also the composers. How does new talent can best approach you for co-writes as composers and also as music publishers kind of breaking into the industry? How can they go ahead and what are the best practices, right, for that? Thank you.
Composers on the co-write.
Yeah, well, there's a couple different things there. So I'm a composer. I wear two hats, basically. I'm a composer. I also own a company called Totem, and we're a music publisher, right? So we are very specifically trailers, right? So this is actually funny because I get emails a lot that are like, hey, I've got this album of music, I own all the writing, I own all the publishing, I own all the masters. I would love to work on some of the projects you're working on. And like, we can't work with music that we don't own. I can't pitch music that I don't own, not me personally. And what I mean by that is we have to be a one-stop clear, right? Like, we're not a record label. We don't release people's music. We're not a third-party admin pitching company. We don't pitch other people's music. We are primarily a boutique custom scoring trailer music, and we put out albums that are very specific, but they're Totem albums. Like, we own them. We don't do other people's music, right? So that's like often the answer when I get sent other music, you know? When it's composers who want to write or something, I'm just interested in people who have something unique to say. I think, you know, as far as how to approach, like, send an email. You know, we have a website. I'll listen to whatever you send, honestly. You know, it's fine. But the thing is, like, a lot of it, I think, it's tough. I think people, when they work specifically in marketing and in trailers, forget that, like, the heart of what we're all looking for is emotion, you know, is like something that moves you. And I think that a lot of people get hyper focused on, like, it sounding quote unquote like a trailer, you know, big drums,
That's a
fast
really good
strings,
point.
brom, brom, you know, like, and it's just sort of like, especially technology has enabled you to have basically an orchestra in your laptop, you know? So I think that it's like, okay, it's like hitting the boxes and working, but like, I'm listening to it flatlined, you know what I mean? And like, I'm more interested, because especially what all these people were talking about before, with what we can do to customize music, I'm more interested, and we can do that in-house. Like, if we're gonna put something, someone wants to write something that's gonna go on a Totem album, I'm not just gonna like take it and put it on a Totem album. You know, I'm gonna work extensively with that person. So I think what I'm looking for is something that makes me feel something, you know, that moves me. And so I think that it's important when people, you know, how to send it, send an email, you know, but what are you sending? Like, is it important? Does it mean something to you? You know, does it have an emotional drive, a push? Is it gonna make us feel something, or is it gonna sound like everything else that we listen to all day, you know?
And practically speaking there, like, I always give the advice, like, if you want to get into trailers, watch trailers. Watch
Absolutely.
them. You will get a sense of, man, this is a tone, this is a style. You'll understand what people do in comedy versus what people do in action.
But don't
versus-
fall into imitating them.
No,
I
well,
feel like
so, yeah, let me finish. So it's like you listen to something, you're like, that's sick. I love that. I want to be that. I want to emulate that, whatever that is. Who did that, right? What composer did that? Okay, now we know that. Who reps that person? Go find out what library pitches them or what publisher has them, and then submit there. Because if you're like, you want to be around like-minded people, you want to be working on those projects. Because to be honest, like, we get so much music sent to us. We have partnered with companies who kind of curate for us so that we don't have to, you know, I could show you guys my email right now. Like, I'm not kidding. I get probably over 2,500 emails a day. I'm not lying. From music, because we work with score, we work with indie publishers, we work with major publishers, major artists, indie artists, sound designers, trailer music, library music, production music, and like, I want it all. Trust me. I'm like, every other day I feel like I haven't listened to it. Like, we don't have the answer yet. Like, I truly want it all, but it's impossible, right? It's impossible to go through everything. So we work with companies that we trust, that they kind of curate. So that's the best way to go about it. Find something that you like, find out who they're working with, and go with them. The second concept I would say is to get noticed by those companies, is watch trailers, see what's going on, but like, notice trailer trends. Like, for example, Disney. All the Disney movies that have been put out back in the 90s, they're making live action versions of those, right? So if you want to show off, I would do beautiful orchestral covers of some like very known theme for Disney, right? Just to show that you can do something like that, right? Or make it really weird, try something different, like try that. Or, hey, I have a favorite song that I love, like, I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna remix it in a trailer style, because I've seen these trailers and this is what they do. So make something that looks like what's out there, to be like, look what I can do for you. And because to me, I'm looking for solutions, like creative solutions and creative partners. And if you can show me that, like, you've solved this problem for me, I'm like, let's go, right? If you send me an album of stuff and you say, hey, here's this action music, cool, but I get a lot of that. But if you're like, hey, I know that this movie's coming out, like they're gonna make, how many John Wicks are coming out, right? It's never stopping. Make me a sick John
Amen.
Wick track with some ideas, like some cool, like I thought about this. I figured I'd be like, hell yeah. Because I needed, my trailer died, my music died, I need a solution in 24 hours. You happen to send me a thing being like, yeah, this kind of feels like it's work for John Wick. And I'm like, boom, 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 like you've solved it. Like, and then you've saved the day.
To touch on what Annie said too, make sure you're doing your research as to who you are sending stuff to. Because while we are, yes, competing, we also all work on very different types of projects. And that's why different clients go to different agencies. Some agencies are really good at horror. Some are really good at family style things. Some are really good at animated things. And there's just so many different genres. Chances are if you send me a horror anything, it could be so freaking good. I'll never use it at Disney, you know? So when I see that people are doing their due diligence and their research on the type of projects that I'm working on, chances are I will try my damnedest to make sure I click that link and I listen to it because I know that you put just as much care as that we're putting into our projects.
That's true of composers and publishers as well, I think. You know, like if you send me, you know, we've got a few albums out. Listen to them. Do you think this could work on a Totem album? Do you think you could write a song with AG? You know, like if you're sending something that's completely out of what it is we generally do, I might think it's great, you know, but it's not going to be right for us probably, you know.
Yeah, and I think just on the artist side, I think for me, well, it's sort of twofold at this point in my life, but like, you know, it's less about how many Instagram followers the artist has and more about do they have a voice that just I'm compelled to work with, that I just can't not work with that person. I have to feel that because again, with the showing up to work, not knowing if you're gonna get paid, it's like, well, you better really fucking be excited about it. And so like, if there's an artist out there that is just like Ray Zaragoza, it's a perfect example, and she's indigenous, and I heard her voice and I was like, I have to know you, we're making an EP right now. And like, that is just like kind of how it is. And also for me at this point, especially in the world of trailers, like I'm looking to work with artists that are of color, and that is like an LGBTQIA. I mean, the representation of that needs to be increased in this world, and that's just like a mission of mine. And so that's kind of the other thing that's like sort of just like what I'm doing right now. But and then also just in terms of like the song, like is the song, you know, well written or honestly written, I guess is probably the better way to say that.
That's a very great word.
Yeah. And, you know, and then also like just could that voice work in trailers? Does it have that quality that draws you in but doesn't distract? It's like this like very fine line, and that really makes you care about the lyric, whether it's a cover or whether it's an original. You really just like feel that lyric really, you know. And I think that is a very special skill, and you don't have to be, you know, super famous for that to be the case, and you don't have to be, you know, it's just you either have it or you kind of don't. Yeah, that's it.
Great.
Well said.
Next questions. Who's got a mic?
Hi
Coley, hit
there.
it.
Hi there, Danny.
My man.
Evelyn, nice to meet you all.
Hello.
My name's Cully from Cully B Productions. We score music and sound design for trailers. What are the current trends, as it were, that you guys are noticing in terms of genres? And maybe, have you noticed AI creeping in?
No.
No.
Definitely not.
I use AI in a very different way.
Stems.
Exactly.
Stem out stuff.
You don't
Yeah,
have
yeah.
stems.
Stems.
Yeah, like software that helps us. I mean, we call it going Russian when we're like, we need to. This song doesn't have splits, so we gotta make them happen. There's software that does that, but I can't even imagine a situation where I would use AI. Can you?
No.
Like to
If I
make
saw,
music.
yeah, like an AI robot, I would beat it to smithereens.
See those Amazon
What
things,
about-
just
Yeah,
kick them
just
over.
What,
take it.
what about the genres of current
That one's
trends
that
and things?
we get asked that question all the time, and it's really tough to answer because every client is different in what they care about. I have notes on each of my clients to be like, this dude doesn't like anything but classic rock, and you know this.
It's so true.
and this client like only likes like over dramatized covers, and every single client is so different, and they're really the purse holders, and they're really the ones who are going to make these calls. So when people notice trends, you might just be noticing things that are put out by that client.
One single person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah, that's a good. That's a
I
really good
ignore
point.
them.
Yeah, I think it's smart
really
to
good
focus
point.
on what you're very good at.
Right.
Like that should be your trend.
do your
Be
thing.
very good at the one thing that you're really passionate about. Don't try to be somebody that does like every single thing and
Right.
is 100, because be good at that one thing and I promise you it'll stand out.
It's just the originality thing. I think that is so everything, just the thing that only you could create or you could make, that signature sound that you came up with, that weird thing that just like defines a character or something in the trailer. I mean, like that is the shit,
It goes to what I was saying before. Like, if it's got to move you, it's got to move everyone. If you're sending one of these people something, they have to be like, wow, that's great. No one's moved anyone by like trying to imitate someone else. You know what I mean? What do you do? Like, what's your story,
We have a terminology that we all use called the signature sound.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that.
Yes, and so what that is exactly what I'm going to call you David. I usually call you DJR, but it is that thing that pulls you into the music, and it has to be new, it has to be fresh, it has to be different, but it also has to somehow tie in, right? So, some like Jurassic Park, right? All the different iterations, they always have some sort of new mechanized, stylized, crazy roar or a foot stomp, right? That like hits and sort of reverberates. So when we're talking about custom music and we're talking to our composers and producers, we're giving them those visuals of like, okay, so we're starting off and there's a dinosaur that comes in and he steps. And imagine that step now, the dinosaurs are out, right? And that reverberates for the rest of time. What is that? What is that sound, right? What is that pulsy, bassy, weird sound that kind of grows and grows because the dinosaurs are coming, right? Like that, right? That is what we do.
version of that, yeah.
Yeah, so you're telling a story, but you're telling a story through sound. And those sounds have to like make sense. I would say there is a trend right now. Everything has like a la, la.
Yeah, that's true.
There's like a vocal.
Yeah, the vocal stuff.
signature sound.
Vocal signature, right, yeah.
And that comes back to like the
Hope
like
somebody was
a
recording
vocalist
that.
that has a unique
sound,
to their
yes.
voice.
Right.
Yeah, using
They
their
can be a
voice as a
signature,
sound effect.
absolutely,
Yeah.
without
Yeah,
lyrics.
that's giant. Yeah.
Also, a signature sound doesn't necessarily have to be sound design. It could be something that is musically driven. A good example is
Absolutely.
DJR and I worked on the Andor teaser, and the signature sound was this like metallic drum hit because we wanted to feel an industrial sound of revolution. He did a really beautiful job. So sometimes a signature sound isn't just sound design. Think about it from a musical perspective too.
Yeah, I think of
It's a motif, It's
Yeah.
a motif in the music. Really.
That's exactly it. I think of it like a hook in a pop song. You know what I mean? It's what is that hook? Like it's sometimes in a song it's like a drum, do 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 do. And it's like or it's a one big hit, or it's a melody that kind of recurs, boo, and then it comes back again
that.
in the middle.
Sample that.
Sample, yeah, there you go.
You guys better be
I
recording.
do this for a
this.
living, guys. Yeah, so it can be anything. It just has to be, when it comes to a signature sound specifically, sort of like a thing. I also think of it as one statement that you could interpret in multiple dynamics. Like if this thing happens, opens the trailer, is there like an ambient, weird, quiet way you can do this? And then when the trailer is as big as it can possibly be, how can you do that same hook and cut through all this madness, And then what does it sound like over title?
Yeah, that's the key to trailer music is build and evolvement, right?
Dynamics.
So you start here,
Build,
you go,
evolve, stop.
you go.
Build, evolve, stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like what you were saying, like there is a correlation with signature sounds in pop music and signature sounds in trailer. It's like it's still that thing that you're like, oh, I know that song because of that hook or because
hook,
of that
yeah.
whatever. The way the guitar sounds, it's not even just what they're playing. It's like, what is it when you get really nerdy about it? Like there's something different about the way the guitar sounds,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it becomes like the sound of the campaign. You're like, oh, that's the sonic signature of this campaign. And clients want that.
That's what they
They're like,
want. That's
yeah,
the
what
idea.
it
has
When
to
they
do
have that
is-
sound, they're going to ride that all the way through. Whatever.
How do
it
we
is.
brand the movie? What is the signature sound of the film?
Sonic branding, yeah.
All right, good
Thank
question.
you guys, man. You're
Who
awesome.
else? Let's see. We got a lot of questions. We got 15 minutes, so let's try to get through everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys
you.
discussing everything.
Wait, where is it coming from?
Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm
The
sorry.
audio's weird. I'm going to look at the ceiling.
Hi, hello. Yeah, thank you. My question was similar to his, so I had to kind of
Pivot.
re-edit.
That's what we do all day long.
So regarding sound design, since we're discussing that, as far as maybe you could speak to how you use sound design in instrumental, speaking about instrumental music now, instrumental trailers like action, thriller. Do you find that when you're using cues, are you adding a lot of sound
Yes.
design?
Like, how do you supplement the music
Like
with sound
often
Kelsey,
design?
talk about that. Like,
I
what-
know
what's
often there's
the-
50. There's
think
like
it's-
sometimes
What's the
there's
sound
50
design
elements.
vibe?
So there's sound design in everything. It's not just action and thriller. Like even the comedy trailers you watch has
right.
tons of sound design. And a proper like theatrical trailer, if you look at the cue sheet, like it'll have like 80 cues on there and only like 3 of them might be music. And the rest is just sound design that the editor is layering in. And that is separate from the sound design that the composer has put into their music. If a composer over sound designs their music,
That's a great point.
it's just a mess and it's chaos
Yeah.
and the editors don't like it because they
Right.
feel like they have no freedom to do
That's a
what
really
they
good
want to
point.
do. And the editors are in there, they're building soundscapes with multiple sound effects. And each of these sound effects has to get licensed. There's a paycheck for each of those things. So I think people don't often think about that. They always think about like, well, I want that big back end cue and I want to land that. And it's like, there's a lot of other things you can
A
land.
lot of stuff in a trailer.
Yeah.
When it comes to sound design, placing it in things and creating it as well, I definitely think like, again, we're a little bit of a broken record up here, but being unique is like if you're gonna make a big hit, they're probably gonna use switch peptides instead. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
there's a
Audio
million
covered.
big
100%.
you know
You told
hits.
Swish 12,
There's a
use that
million.
one.
There's a
Swish
lot of
12.
these. Yes.
Broken
But I'm
vortex.
serious, you know, and especially editors, people who have been doing this for a long time.
They have their favorites.
They have their favorites, and
Yeah.
they go to their favorites. The same way you, as a composer, you might have a drum sound you really like, and that's your drum sound, and you go to it. These editors do that too. So if you're making sound design, think about what are those cool. I mean, Annie mentioned a la la la. You know, maybe there's vocal thing. There's any number of things you can do.
great.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of versions. Let's say we have a full trailer queue, but we might have 6 mix outs. Like you're saying, you don't want everything in there.
Alt mix kind of
So
things.
you often use an alt mix that's just percussion and drones or something like that.
Yeah, at that
Sometimes.
point it
Yeah.
becomes up to the editor.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of up to the editor. Also, we will always ask for stems.
Yeah.
So even if there is an alt mix, 99.9, 100% of the time,
Yeah.
the editor is going to make their own mix completely. And they're going to take things out. Sometimes they're going to double things up in there. So while those alt mixes are definitely helpful, at least for our producers or creative directors or the clients, if sometimes we're just sending the mix as a whole to understand, that's helpful for that. But for the editors and the actual editing process, what really comes in handy are those stems because they're creating their own mixes at the end of the day.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I think alt mixes are like almost exclusively in TV, in broadcast and stuff, like all
Yeah,
those kind of things.
we don't use that. I mean, they're good to have, I guess, like
Use
maybe a
stems more.
percussion mix.
Yeah.
More like a proof of concept, like look at
Yeah.
this other way
Yeah, look what
the
this could
music
be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait,
I'll just
right.
couch because I work in a lot of different medias. I would say, and I think an overarching theme that we're talking about here is trailer editors and trailer music has gotten a lot more customizable. Trailer editors have gotten a lot better at music editing over the years. They want to touch those things. They want to get in there. So for trailer stuff, imagine what you're making is going to get broke apart, right?
course, yeah.
Immediately.
We release all ours.
But in film and television, the editors sometimes you're not working on those things until music editors until something's like super duper locked in. So having those sort of like sub mixes, alt mixes, and whatnot for a non-music editor to use is very, very necessary.
point.
And I
Great
find
point.
when I work with advertising editors who don't do music editing, they are just laying it in. They're purely
Just drop it
editorial.
in.
They're
Yeah.
dropping it, and so for them, they'll be like, "Hey, is there a mix where like the strings aren't in here?" I'm like, "Yeah, let me just get you the stems." And they're like, "What?" Like they are not, they're not going to be able to do it. They're just not familiar with it. And like they could, they just don't have the time. They're, so
Right.
I feel like editors do that for TV too. TV spots.
TV spots too are
30
a little
seconds,
bit
yeah.
more plug and play because they're so formulaic and like are just so condensed. But yeah, I don't stop doing those. They're just not necessarily.
Right. We do those, and we also release all the stems are on
Good.
the
Yeah.
end.
Because
Yeah.
stems are
Stems are
non-negotiable.
on the
gotta have
end
them
as
as
well.
Yeah.
Always
Can I make a really quick
stems.
point about, I know we're short on time, but when it comes to stems, the amount of composers who who I find are like, oh, well, the full mix is slamming, and then the stems are like a mess, and there's like
Yeah,
things
fix
that
that.
they're just like missing or not paying attention to details. I always tell people like, your full mix really doesn't matter at all. Your full mix has to sell the idea of your
Facts.
music to these people, but then it's just the stems. So you like focus on what in each individual stem sounds
Master
like.
everything.
Master those stems,
Yeah.
dudes.
All right.
And let-
Let's,
just- so-
oh, go ahead. No.
It's
go,
such
go,
a
go.
good one, I swear.
go.
So
Give it.
it's so helpful.
Do it. Yeah.
So I feel like when I first started working in trailers, I did this sort of like overachiever thing where I was like, I'm gonna just learn how to do all kinds of dope sound effects and shit and da da da. And then I was like, nah. I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. Instead, what I do now is I'll create stuff that does the same thing as what a sound design cue would do, but with real instruments, and that sounds organic and sounds real. And then the editor can choose to sort of like layer in things that sound more like sound design. So I just sort of keep it like, if it was just a great song that just so happened to be really impactful in the same way that this certain sound design cue, what would that be? And I feel like that's been helpful.
One last thing about
Great.
sound design. Obviously, you've heard here, trailer editors like to do it themselves. So when you are making sound design, always have the key, always have the BPM, and always create it in tones. So we've got our dark version, we've got our neutral version, and we have our light version.
And
so that we
metadata
can,
in the metadata.
Yeah,
in
you
the
just do that for
metadata,
everything
so that
you
they
do,
can
by the
plop
way.
it in wherever, right? If you have a little string thing, right, and it's gonna be for comedy, right, as opposed to like instead of like horror, make all of those.
We're going to have a release by the end of this. thing.
Yeah.
We're recording all this. We're going to.
We have no
Smell
shame,
a
by the way.
collab
What we
coming.
have to do to with our mouths to convey stuff to composers and with clients, like I am incapable.
I
of
send
being
a lot of
embarrassed at
voice
this point.
notes.
Facts. Lots
So
of voice
many
notes, lots of
voice
voice memos.
notes.
All right, let's try to get a couple more questions in before our time runs out. So who's got the mic? That guy right there. Yeah, you hit it, buddy. Yeah, you. Project.
It looked like a mic.
All right.
Thank you. When you request customs from your publishers, how many do you usually get?
Depends on the project.
Okay.
Yeah. If I have like enough demo fees to pass around, I will have multiple composers take passes with different ideas maybe. If I have enough demo fee for only one person, then that one person is going to do it.
There could also be a very specific ask, and so there's not really room to get creative.
Yeah,
And there's
I
other
al-
times where you're like, show me what you got, right?
I don't like to go to more than 2 people. It feels mean.
Yeah.
I don't like to do that.
Yeah, I personally like to try my hardest to work with one composer on a project because we are already competing against so many people. But you know, if I'm being asked to work on multiple trailers for one project, then usually that's the point that I'll try to reach out to a couple of different vendors. But personally, I like to reach out to a singular vendor.
Cool.
I feel like this guy right here has held his hand up,
Oh.
but
All right,
you,
you're next.
and then we got
You're
this
next.
guy just because
You're
he's been
next.
like, his
He's
arm,
next.
he's like sweating, it's been shaking. Yeah, we got
We
you.
got 3 minutes. Let's do this. Hit it.
Oh, yes, you absolutely.
As an independent songwriter and producer, having stems, metadata, and split sheets are the things that I'm trying to overachieve at, as AG would say. Is there anything else that would make you guys love us in terms of our organization? Is there anything missing from that equation?
Just organizationally.
Just organi-
not
yeah,
like
right.
music. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I mean, for me, it's you have stems and it has metadata. That is ace. The only other thing I would just recommend is when you guys are sending stuff to us, don't let your download links expire.
Yeah.
That's a
Because
great
oftentimes,
point.
Big one.
sometimes if I'm in
Evelin
a
point.
hot
Fantastic point.
rush, I will look for an email that maybe somebody sent me like 6 months ago because I may not have had a project at that moment that would have been good for, but it came across my desk 6 months later and I only have so much space on my hard drive. So I'll go back to that email and I'll hit download and it's expired and then I have to email and I'm like, I have no time and I'll move on to the next thing.
Or
So just-
yeah, I was going to say even worse, you'll move
Yeah.
on, and that's your shot.
So
That's
don't
your shot.
let your
My-
download links expire.
My pet peeve is when I download something, the file name doesn't have the artist name in it.
Ooh,
That
file
kills
naming
me.
is huge.
Yeah.
That kills me.
Also,
huge.
high-res
Don't
files.
don't make me write the file name
Don't put a
myself.
bunch of numbers in it. Yeah.
I would say most of us, well, I don't want to speak for most of us, but I use my email like Google,
Me
like
too.
legitimately.
Yeah.
Because I get so much.
100%.
So I am searching for, I'll type in, think like, what did I search for the other day? Like slow burn emotional. I wrote that into my email to see who sent
I mean, I do that all
me
the
stuff where they said this feels like slow burn emotional because I needed to send something like 20 minutes. So write, if you know that your music sounds a certain way or you had an intention for it cinematically, write that. So you're like, hi, I'm this. I make this kind of music. My thoughts were that this feels like this, this, and this. Thank you for your time. Then I'm
That's
going
a
to
great
Google
point.
it and I'm going to search in slow burn emotional, and you happen to say that, I'm like, boop, 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 boop. Like, you've helped me. That's what it is. Like, we cannot do our jobs without you guys. Impossible. So think about it. You are our partners. You have to help us get there, think, find it. Like, we can't. It's impossible. There's, like, I have
positive
young people
answer.
on my team. Like, I'm done with my job for today. I'm like, did you listen to every song ever?
Exactly.
Because you're not done.
All right.
One last thing, make sure you
question.
guys
We
have
got 2
high-res
minutes
files.
left. Hit it. Better be a good one. It's the last
Better
one.
be a good
Yeah,
question after all.
I have a mic now. Thank you. My name is Nick. I'm with Proper One. More of an administrative question. Do remix composers ever negotiate any sort of piece of the publishing of their version?
Yes.
Or is that not a thing?
I mean, sometimes it's hard. It really depends what you're remixing, for trailers specifically. I mean, there's short answer, yes, anything's possible. It's what you can negotiate, what the artist is, what they're willing to agree to. The publishing, if you're doing a remix, you're more likely to get a piece of the master than you are the publishing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never gotten publishing.
Yeah,
on a remix.
I was. Yeah, it's very rare. I think
It's not going to
get the
happen,
publishing.
probably. But you might get a piece of the master. It's really up to the artist. At the end of the day, the artist can say, "This is my music," or the label or whatever can say, "This is my music." If you do a remix, we'll put it in a trailer. You can get the sync fee, but we own this.
Also, I will say, you can't really collect on trailers if that is
That's
part
true.
of that.
Oh yeah, the
There's no back end.
Just get your fee at the front and that's it. There's no back
That's why
end.
those fees are also so high, because you can't get a royalty on something that's being shown in a movie theater.
For like a few weeks,
So keep
Right.
that in mind.
Good questions. I think
Thank you.
we're
Out of
done?
time. Yeah.
All done. We're out of time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you to the panel. You guys did a great job. Very
Thanks, Danny.
informative.
Thanks, Danny.
You guys are the best.
Round of applause for Danny.
Thank you.